Then we have the steering committee, and then the steering committee is the one which steers the agenda of the full platform. Then the business is transacted within the thematic working groups. We have 5 of them. The first one is on knowledge sharing. The second one is on coordination and reporting. Thematic working group 3 is on networking and collaboration. 4 is on policy development and implementation. And then lastly, we have TWG 5 on social inclusion. I am happy to note that the team lead, the thematic lead for TWG 2 on coordination and reporting is within this room. Perhaps you can also be able to share some insights to how the groups work, but basically that's how it is organized. The steering committee meets once every month, unless there's some pressing issues. Thematic working groups, they meet as need arises, but basically every month they should be able to meet so that they can be able to escalate the agenda to the steering committee for deliberations and eventual presentation to the full MSP. We are looking at some of this steering committee and the achievements. Yeah, these are the roles, and then these are some of the achievements which we have been able to achieve as the steering committee. On the issue of oversight, implementation of the MSP strategic plan, normally the steering committee is the one which facilitates the TWGs to drive the activities to be able to achieve their objectives. I think this one we have been able to do it very well. Then there is also issues of the resource mobilization for the platform. We have been able to mobilize support for the implementation of the work plans. We have received support from MIRI, CIAT, SNV, BioVision, GIZ, WWF. SOCA also supported us to establish the MSP in Kakamega. Then it's also the steering committee which plans, budgets, and set the agenda for the MSP activities. And so far, since the inception, the committee has been able to steer the MSP through the planning meetings, setting the agenda, and organizing the general MSP meetings, which are normally overwhelmingly attended. Currently, we have a membership of more than 50 members within the MSP, and the platform is very robust and very active. Then also, another responsibility is to liaise with the internal and external stakeholders, including in climate change negotiations. Normally, the platform facilitates the development of country positions or call to action papers on agriculture issues ahead of every conference of parties. Like this year, we are gearing up for COP29, which will happen sometimes in November. So the platform normally will steer ahead in development of the country position on matters climate action in agriculture. And also, we also mobilize for the partners to develop what we call a call to action papers. This is like lobbying when we want some aspects or some issues to be adopted in the climate change negotiations. I think we've been able to do that in participation in the COP and the SBs. SBs is the subsidiary body. Subsidiary bodies, we have 2 on science and technology and on implementation. These are the technical arms which steer the UNCCC, the United Nations Conference on Convention on Climate Change. So normally, whatever is developed is what the country delegation on matters agriculture, these are the issues which are picked to be integrated within the negotiations and the ongoings within the global arena on matters agriculture and climate change. Then lastly is coordinate information and knowledge management, including the MSP website and social media platforms. And here we've been able to develop and maintain the Csa-Msp website with support of the ministerial ICT team. So that is some of the achievements from the steering committee. TWG1 on knowledge sharing. They have some strategic outputs, and then we also noting what have they been able to achieve. On the sphere of enhanced knowledge sharing of climate action to stakeholders through data and information management frameworks, we've been able to carry out an analysis of approaches used to address climate change impacts and build resilience and adaptation of agricultural value chains, actors, and farming systems in Kenya. That one has been done, although we've not released it, still in draft form, but we hope we'll be able to release that paper. Then on operationalization of the county Csa-Msps, remember at the national level, we have the platform at the national level. Then we've been cascading the same structure to the counties. This one we have been able to achieve with support from the partners. Currently, we've been able to establish the county chapters of the MSP in 24 counties. They are there, the ones which we have established. SNV are supported in 11 counties: Nakuru, Nyandarua, Tharaka, Kitui, Makueni, Machakos, Bomet, Narok, Embu, and Kisumu. SIAT in 4, Taveta, Murang'a, Baringo, Nyamira. Then recently we established in Laikipia and Turkana. Then SOCA are supported Bugoma, Kakamega, Nakuru, and Uasin Gishu. Then BioVision, Trust Africa, they have supported establishment in Siaya and Busia. Then SEMIRED, this is Center for Minority Rights Development. They have supported in Kajiado and Baringo. And let me say that we are really appreciative for SOCA to have supported that initiative. SNV also, we are also appreciative. There's also some indicative proposal of supporting establishment of 2 more county MSPs in Elgeyo Marakwet and Peter, is it Nandi? And Nandi and Marakwet. Hopefully we'll be able to implement that activity in those 2 counties before the end of the year, if all goes well. Then on enhanced dissemination and upscaling of climate action, again we have supported domesticating of the climate smart agriculture strategy and the implementation framework in 24 counties. Of course, we had support from USDA, from ICRA, and lastly from FLOCA. FLOCA is financing locally led climate action. Then on increased membership of the Csa-Msp, we're saying we have increased the membership from an initial 15 members. Now we are saying we have more than 50. And then we are continuously recruiting new partners and members using an online tool where members profile themselves, and then we'll be able to vet and admit to the general membership of the Csa-Msp. Yeah, and we are saying we are also using resources from these networks to reach out to the counties. Then we are also mainstreaming youth in climate action in the agriculture. And here, what the achievement here is we have been able to recruit and work with the members or partners who are promoting youth activities, especially in the climate smart agriculture space. TWG2, On the output on supporting coordination of data collection, sharing, processing, and validation on climate action in the agriculture sector, we've been able to develop the Csa M&E framework, and also we have also developed the reporting tool, the M&E reporting tool, for reporting all the achievements and implementation of Csa actions. Then also on supporting collaboration and integration of sector stakeholders for adherence to establish reporting systems in climate action. Still we are saying that again we have also been able to develop a reporting tool for greenhouse gases in inventory reporting on tier 2. I don't know whether I need to say anything, but one of the obligations we have as a party to the UNFCCC, the framework on Convention on Climate Change, is that countries or the parties are mandated to report on the actions they are taking towards minimizing the greenhouse gas emissions, and that is the simplest I just want to make it very simple. So we are mandated to report. This year there is a report which is expected, what we call the biennial transparency report, and this is the report which reports on all the emissions from all the IPCC sectors which report on matters GHG. So we've been able to develop a reporting tool for GHG for reporting. Normally we have been reporting at tier 1. Tier 1 is the most elementary report, which it doesn't have a lot of information, and normally the verifiability and the credibility of the data is also not very good. But now we are moving to tier 2 for the crop subsector for this year. So this tool has been developed, and we were able to pilot it in 5 counties. We piloted it in Murang'a, Nyamira, Baringo, Taveta, and hopefully we are going to pilot it in Makueni in a week's time or 2. So that is TWG2. Then on TWG3, on networking and collaboration, this is the TWG which supports collaboration across all the levels of the stakeholders to ensure that there is synergy in the implementation of climate action in agriculture. To this end, they have been able to develop guidelines on partnerships and collaboration, although they are in draft form. They have also been able to develop the Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture Investment Plan. This plan is ready. It will be launched anytime. Yeah, it guides on some of the investment which communities can invest in to be able to address matters of sustainable production and productivity while addressing issues of minimizing emissions and building resilience in the food systems. Then also another area is on supporting collaborations and linkages, especially on matters of knowledge sharing expertise across the platform members. And we've been able to organize a capacity building for partners on negotiations in collaboration with the African Group of Negotiators Expert Support. We call it HAGNES. That is the team of experts which builds capacity in the experts which go for negotiations to the global arena. That is in the COPs and the HSBs. Then lastly is supporting MSP members to access private and public finance. And notably is that we've been able to train national and county MSPs on the financing locally led climate action and other climate finance sources. So we are building that capacity and hopefully these also have been supported by CIAT. So if the plan, because that phase ended, but we are negotiating for another phase, and hopefully we'll be able to sensitize the county MSPs and also train them on how they can be able to access climate finance. TWG4 on policy development and implementation. Notable achievements here. They've been able to bring actors together to discuss pertinent issues within the sector, notably which can feed into the policy frameworks. And this one, they were able to do it in a conference which was held sometimes last time in Mombasa. They've also been very instrumental in reviewing the Climate Change Act. Most of the structures we are talking here today, I had my colleague from, was it Bogoma, talking about the Climate Change Unit. Climate Change Act 2016 is the one which mandated all the ministries, departments, and government agencies to move or to put in place the Climate Change Units to spearhead matters or mainstream matters of climate change into programs, projects, and activities of those ministries. This Climate Change Act was reviewed last year, 2023, and the review was basically to bring on board issues of carbon market trade. That was basically, so this team was very critical in that review, and also the team was also very, very critical in the development of the National Climate Change Action Plan, the one which is now guiding us within for 2023 to 2027. And also they were also able to develop a policy brief for the GHG inventory. Then periodically when we are reviewing issues policy, they also assist in preparing policy briefs, and also on issues of financing CSA and gender social inclusion in the CSA. The last TWG on social inclusivity, I said basically this TWG is to ensure that there is inclusion when we're implementing agricultural climate action in the agriculture sector. And also, they also promote and support community-led climate action to enhance the adaptive capacity and reduce vulnerability. And then lastly, it lies with other TWGs to ensure inclusivity of indigenous peoples, women, youth in the activities. And one of the achievements which was achieved recently, we were able to develop the agriculture and climate security curriculum. This one we did in collaboration with the JQ Watt. The essence here is to see how we can use CSA as a means of building resilience in the communities to be able to minimize conflicts and issues of insecurity in the communities. Yeah, this curriculum has been, the modules have been developed, and we piloted them in Laikipia and Turkana counties. And JQ Watt will be offering this course. It will be a short course for people who are operating within peace building and conflict management, especially within the fragile ecosystems in the households. So those were the achievements. What are the challenges we have experienced in the MSP? I said that the MSP is a voluntary organization. Yeah, and when it is voluntary, it is very difficult to effectively hold members to account. Yeah. Hapa tushiki mtu kwa shingo. And also let me say that our approach to this MSP is that it is an informal association. In fact, it is not even registered. It is not. We wanted to make it very easy for people to come in and walk out when they wish. So because of that, sometimes we may have competing interests, but we try to to manage the expectations of the different segments of the platform. I also talked about establishment of the county Csa-Msps in the 24 counties. We realized that some of the county MSPs are struggling. So the sustainability of these structures we are establishing in the counties is also a challenge because of issues to do with supporting resources to support the activities at the platform level. Normally we have used partners, organizations who are implementing programs in those counties. The biggest challenge is when that partner, the project is implementing, once the project ends, then there is a gap. And before we can be able to identify somebody to take over, then we can have some dormancy or a platform which is not very robust. Then we have no control of resources from supporting members. When we approach a partner to support an activity or a project, normally the resources are with that partner. It is not brought into a central basket we can be able to control. So you cannot control resources which are not within your pocket. It becomes very difficult also on that. Then we have members at different levels of capacity, interest, and influence. So also this one is also a challenge. But the central challenge is because we are not formalized, then it becomes very difficult to fundraise as an entity. Yeah, that is why the centrality there. We cannot be able to fundraise as a Csa-Msp. So normally we approach individual members or partners to be able to support the agenda. But if we had been able to formalize, then we'll be talking about a structure we can be able to fundraise as an MSP. So what are the strengths which we have as a platform? We have policy, legal, and institutional alignment. We are aligned to the Climate Change Act. We are aligned to the Kenya Climate Smart Agriculture Implementation Framework. As I said, it is the CCU of the ministry which coordinates the MSP, and this one gives the structure. It gives the platform authenticity and authority as far as the implementation of climate action within the agricultural sector is concerned. Then, of course, there are the mutual benefits attained by member organizations through engaging within the MSP. Yeah, we have where a partner is working in a particular area, we can be able to collaborate to build that synergy for the mutual benefit of the individual organizations and also the benefits which accrue to the organizations as well to the target communities. So where we have challenges, we also have opportunities. Yeah, we have an opportunity of bringing on board more members, and we can do this through enhancing feasibility of the MSP and sensitizing other partners to be able to come on board. Then we also need to come up with innovative means of resource mobilization for the MSP operations. Also, we also need to be very innovative to publicize the achievements of the platform so that we can be able to spur issues to do with membership and also to attract resources to support us. Then lastly, we also have an opportunity for networking and learning and sharing experiences with other platforms. Let me say that we had a forum, I think it was last month, which brought together partners within the East African community, and we were sharing on how they are implementing CSA within the agriculture sector. And this approach we are approaching within that forum which we had was actually touted as the one which was best suited and the one which is achieving. So actually, our neighbors, like my friend said here, they have picked, Ethiopia picked, and they are implementing now a platform mirrored like what we are doing in Kenya. So ladies and gentlemen, I wish to pause there. Thank you very much for listening to me, Mr. Denson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kibaya. We want to move to the next session, but perhaps there are some questions. I know we can allow just for maybe one, maximum 3 questions to Mr. Kibaya. Maybe anything that is particularly burning, and if there are none, then we'll move on. But that was very comprehensive as an overview of the state of play. I think it already gives us some entry points in terms of how, as stakeholders who are in this space, you know, both from a regenerative agriculture point of view, but also as members of the various MSPs at the county, where do we find our entry point? And so if there are any questions, 1 or 2 questions. Okay. Could we please get another microphone?
Thank you, Mr. Kibaya, for that an elaborate presentation. There are some observations that I've made, and I wish maybe just to get a clarification. You talked of a volunteer entity. I looked at it as a weakness. Then when you highlighted about the strengths, I was looking at the legal backup and the framework that you have. I don't know, maybe just clarify, how are you trying to balance on the side of a volunteer organization and the legal backup that you're having? Because you talked of possibly somebody freely coming in, freely working out. And to the best of my understanding, these are things being coordinated by the national government. Issues of climate change, the government has been a signatory to several international obligations. And when you talk of locally, we having a volunteer entity, I tend to get confused. Thank you.
Thank you. Let us not confuse the 2 issues. Within government, we have very elaborate and clear coordination structure of matters climate change. Matters climate change in this country are coordinated by the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry through the Climate Change Directorate. That is the coordination within government. No ambiguity, everything is laid down on how we report, on how we do business within government. But we realize in the sector and the various sectors, we have other very important stakeholders and partners. How do we coordinate them? We are saying it's a challenge because the people in the counties will know. When we're implementing projects like NALEP, we used to have a very robust, we used to call them what? Stakeholder forums. And even some districts, we went ahead even to register them. We know the story. What becomes when we register somebody anakalia, mimi ndio nimechaguliwa, mnaanza vita ingine kidogo kidogo. So within this platform, and we welcome proposals on how we can make it work better. I said it's a volunteer. When SNV, when SOCA picks to support activities, it is purely on a voluntary what? Yeah? It's purely on voluntary. And even when you undertake to do issues or implement activities, It is purely on a voluntary basis. You don't get paid. When you are coming to develop the policy brief, tutatengeza na uende nyumbani. Is that? But that one notwithstanding, what we envisage is to continuously try to see how we can be able to hold members to account within the platform. If formalizing by registration or by works better, but for the time being, the partners are in increment. What we have is working for us. It is working for us, but continuously we are looking at ways on how to enhance the efficiency and the effectiveness of the platform. Thank you.
Any other questions? Just one more? All right, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Kibaya. We have at this point some highlights just to give us a snapshot from the project itself. So we have 3 colleagues from the implementing partners who will just come up and give us some quick highlights just to give us a flavor for what exactly was going on through the project. And then of course we'll get into a bit more detail after the tea break. So Felix Odingo, Professor Rewe, I don't know if you have caucused on who. I think Professor Rewe, you're coming first? Or Felix? Have? All right, please. And Patrick. I believe Patrick is standing in for Dr. Ojwang. So, Sigei, karibuni. Can someone help just put 3 seats here? So, karibuni. Just, this is not going to be moderated as such, but of course, just to keep the conversation flowing. We want, as an audience, just to appreciate the highlights as implementers. What have you been up to? All right, so I apologize. I think, you know, the gender. But we've balanced it. So later on we'll be seeing the stronger representation from the other gender. But as was said initially, the project has, or this particular project, which is Realms, was supported by IKEA, the pronunciation differs, the foundation. And then, of course, leading the overall implementation was SNV, the Netherlands Development Organization. So we have Patrick Sigei sitting in for David Ojwang. And then for the specific outcome, because there were 3 outcome areas, one was to do with supporting farmers in adoption of regenerative practices. The second one was to do with supporting businesses, private sector, so that they can be robust in providing solutions, technologies, and then the third one was to support the enabling environment. So for the third outcome area, we had SOCA, led by Felix Odingo, who was leading the advocacy work, and then we had Great Lakes University, so with Professor Rewe and his team, doing the research and of course taking us through what you call the evidence-based advocacy. So we'll hear probably from, we could start with Patrick, just to give us a flavor for the project overall, and then just move across, you know, Felix and Professor Rewe.
All right, thank you. My name is Patrick, as have been said. But I also have a scientific name, sometimes, which I use, and that one is Sigei. All right, so I I'm from the SNV and has been within this project for quite some time now, 4 years. And this is a project that started in 2020 and is coming to an end this coming month. That is the first phase. And we are looking forward to having a second phase in the coming months. We have been working in 5 counties, and I can see representatives from each of the counties here, both from the government. I also see a number of farmers that we've been working together. Anyone from the private sector? Perhaps they are also here. And within the 5 counties, we targeted working with 1,000 farmers per county as direct beneficiaries, but also targeting so that at least every farmer can be able to influence 3 other farmers. And how we structured the project is that we had the 3 outcomes, just like my brother Ricky has mentioned. The first one on training farmers to adopt regenerative agricultural practices. And the second one is on at least stimulating investment so that the farmers, but also the private sector, can invest more on regenerative agriculture. And the third component on building or supporting an enabling environment. Under outcome 1, we had a number of partners that we worked together, but largely we did direct implementation, but with the support of the government, the county government, and where the county governments were actually training who we are calling the farmer field school facilitators. So each county government had supported us with the master trainers. We're calling them the master trainers, who supported us in training our farmer field schools facilitators, who then trained the farmers at the farmer field schools on the different approaches. And the target was for every farmer to at least adopt 5 regenerative agricultural practices. I wouldn't want to go into the details of what that meant, but we now have at least some lessons that we have derived out of that. On the second outcome then was, once the farmers have been able to produce from the regenerative practices that we have supported them to adopt, then the thinking was, could we have a private sector that offtakes from these practices? And so we've worked with quite a number of private sector actors, both those who are off-taking from these systems, but also those who provide the regenerative agricultural inputs. I mentioned that this project comes to an end in the coming month, but we have quite a number of lessons, rich lessons that we have derived in the process. And that is now helping us to move into the second phase, God willing, which is likely to start next year around April or March. I don't know to what extent do you want me to proceed further into the details, but I think that gives an overview of what we were intending to do. Well, I just wanted to mention that we worked with I mentioned that we worked with 8 private sector companies, the SMEs. And so we had an elaborate support for the private sector, same as the support that we had for the farmers, and also the good work that has been done on outcome 3 by the different organizations that we're working together with, the GLUC and SOCA. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. Let's give him a hand. So we'll definitely come back to query a bit on the highlights, some of the specific results and what opportunities, because I think this is a good forum to see in terms of even how we move forward. What are some of the opportunities that some of the stakeholders in the room can pick up? So we'll come to that, but Felix, karibu.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Okay, I'm Felix Odingo, soccer advocacy. So, under soccer was we were doing in the RIMS project, we were handling output 3, which was enabling environment for RA adoption. So, for us to create that environment, what we were doing in particular, we started by cascading the Csa-Msp to the 5 counties, which are represented here. That is, there was in Gishu, Kakamega, Bungoma, Kericho, and Nakuru. So we did a cascading for the Csa-Msp. So within those MSP, multi-stakeholder platforms, so the MSP, which were supposed to, and are headed by the government, that is the county government, through the CDS office and climate change unit office. That is where it is, for Bungoma, it is under the climate change unit. So, so with this Csa-Msp, it was to create an enabling environment for all the stakeholders who are working within the counties to be able to communicate, such that without any suspicion, because that the government, if the government owns, and that's the only place whereby everybody can come as private actor to do their business. So that's why we were so much into the formation of the MSPs, to bring all the stakeholders together and have knowledge sharing. So the Csa-Msp also, we were to be cascaded to the lower levels, whereby because the grassroots where the farmers are, so there was the cascading at the sub-county levels, whereby the sub-county agriculture officers were also now the link with the farmers, because that's where the farmers are. So whatever happens at the top also reaches the grassroots, and there is more engagement, so the farmers understand, because this thing was for the benefit of the farmers, because the enabling environment is for the farmers to have good policies, strategies, and also the implementation of those policies, so it is them to track it. So that's why we are also doing the cascading of this Csa-Msp in the sub-counties. So we did the cascading headed by the county in charge for the Csa-Msps. We also, we were doing, because for sustainability, the projects come, the development partners come and go. The officers within the government also go, because they are transferred, or they move, or they'll retire. But the offices remain, and also the farmers will always remain. So those are a constant. So for these sustainabilities, we ensure that these things are anchored within the offices of the government, and also with the farmers. So we did capacity building for farmers, the RA. There are so many farmers, which the output 1, which Gay has talked about, who are trained on RA practices in the adoption and for those technologies. So with these ones here now, the farmers, there are those who are now selected to be the lead. The other thing, you had some introducing themselves as champions. So we have champions here. So the champions were taken for further training to be the TOTs and to train other farmers on issues to do with advocacy, so that they are now able to talk. So if policies are being formulated, they are at the center. It originates from them. They have to understand, and then this thing, and they're able to track whatever happens. So then we have a team which has been trained, and they've been doing the engagements through the evidence generation, which is done by the GLUC. So we have the RA champions here who have done that engagement at the farm. So far, what can say as what we have done across is supporting the county governments in their departments, from the Department of Agriculture and Climate Change Unit, in development of policies, strategies which are supportive of RA. So in Kakamega, we did horticulture strategy, which is at advanced stage. It had reached the cabinet stage. There was also the horticulture policy, which is at the draft. So it takes some time for it to be completed. So it's still in the initial draft stages for that. Kakamega, in Bungoma, there was also the Csa-Msp, Climate Information Service Plan. I think that's how it's called, the Jen. Yes, okay, so that was also a requirement under the FLOCA, so we supported the development for that Csa-Msp plan for Bungoma, and it was completed, and I think it is in use, so they'll be there to speak about it, how that thing is. So in Uasin Gishu, there was the agribusiness strategy. So the agribusiness strategy anchored on agroecologically produced for products within their county. So they were looking at how to ensure that the farmers access those inputs and also the markets for the products which are produced agroecologically. So we are also in the advanced stage of agribusiness strategy within the Uasin Gishu. I think the next stages, I think it's at somewhere cabinet approval. So that's where we are with that one. So maybe other specifics we'll speak to them when we get to the next stage. Yeah.
Thank you, Felix. Professor Wewe.
Okay, thank you, Ricky. First is to appreciate the thinking of SNV and their colleagues in crafting this project, because most of the time the universities work alone and disjointed, either from farming communities and from policymakers. So this project, I think I really have to appreciate how it was designed. It has even influenced our partnership with other organizations, because they have suddenly realized that without an academic partner, you are really compromised in how you want to approach the whole thing. So thank you very much for that thinking. Great Lakes colleagues have introduced themselves here. Our job was basically evidence creation. There have been a lot of drive towards organic farming, agroecological practices, and so forth. So for me, I was looking at it in two ways. One is in what we are calling the RA practices, regenerative agricultural practices, transiting from just being practices to technologies. And then the second thing, of course, was producing the evidence for the SMEs. On the practices, for some time, the way they have been packaged, you know, in science we say something has to have a standard and it has to be replicable. Do we say replicable? Yeah? Something that can be replicated. For example, like the M-Pesa. The M-Pesa is a technology. If it only worked once by one person, today we will not be using it. But they had to try it. The next person say, hey, it's working. Just try and send money to so-and-so. It's working. So if a farmer is doing composting and it becomes a singular practice where it cannot be replicated in another farm, then it doesn't transition to a technology. And for that reason, we were very delighted to find SMEs that wanted to make these practices technologies. Yeah? And when they become technologies like organic fertilizers, they have to have standards and they have to be replicable. So what we did was to pull out those RA practices that are being packaged into technologies by the SMEs and then take them into the field to test them there on our soils with our farmers. And the farmers are here. I don't know if the SMEs are here. The SMEs are not here maybe, but the farmers are here. And the way we approached the research was that there was a on station, we had the university farm, but the farmer field school were also participating researchers such that they were not excluded in the process of data collection, land preparation. In fact, if you probably evaluate them academically, it's highly likely that we may be giving diplomas or degrees to these farmers at this moment. They have done some splendid work in the field in the process of research. Where I wanted to go with this is that Great Lakes is looking at the soil as a living organism. The soil is a complex living strata, and regenerative agriculture speaks to that fact. And my analogy, which is the layman's analogy, and I give it everywhere I go, is the analogy of the donkey. Mnakumbuka niliwatolea mfano wa punda. Kila mahali nikienda, hata nikiamsha mkulima hapa atawaambia mfano wa punda. Punda ni mnyama mzuri sana, manake anawabebea maji kutoka mtoni, analeta nyumbani, anabeba, analeta nyumbani, anabeba, analeta nyumbani. Hana tofauti sana na mchanga. Vile unapandwa mimea, unakuza, unavuna, unapanda, unakuza, unavuna, unamwekea unalisha mimea na fertilizer zile za kawaida. Na katika hiyo hali punda akiendelea kubeba maji na punda mwenyewe ana afya na halishwi vizuri, atafanyika nini? Atakupatia red card, ata collapse. Na mchanga umeanza kufanyika hivyo kwa sababu fertilizer zile ambazo tulikuwa tunatumia, and let me be clear, we are not against NPK. NPK is a very good fertilizer. Mahali tulikuwa na shida na fertilizer zile ambazo zinatengenezwa kwa factory, chemical fertilizers, ni kwamba nia ya kutengeza hizo fertilizer ilikuwa si mchanga bali ni mimea. Sijui kama mnanielewa. Tunataka kulisha mimea yetu ambao ni sawa. Lakini ukiwa unatumia mchanga kama njia tu, anaweka hiyo chakula ya mimea inachukua yote. Sijui kama unanielewa. Unaweka kwa mchanga, mimea inachukua yote. Unaweka kwa mchanga, mimea inachukua yote. Siku moja hiyo mchanga itafanya nini? Itakufa, itakataa. That's why we are having problems with acidity. We are having problems with lack of organic matter in the soil. Our microorganisms in the soil wanakufa, alafu soil texture inabadilika na mambo kama hayo. So katika mikakati yetu ya kufanya utafiti huu, tumepata kuona kwamba regenerative agriculture inaanza kulisha sasa mchanga, feeding the soil, na ukilisha chochote vizuri kinakuwa na afya. Ndio siku hizi unasikia mambo ambayo yanasema soil health, afya ya mchanga. Na baadaye daktari mmoja kutoka Great Lakes atawapatia presentation ambayo ni results sasa, ambayo kutokana na utafiti ambao tulifanya kwa counties 5. Nafikiri tulikuwa Nakuru, na tulikuwa Kericho, na tulikuwa Kakamega, na tulikuwa Bungoma na Uasin Gishu. Na tulichukua farmer field school moja iwe kama case study. Tukatumia mashamba yao kutafiti hizi teknolojia kutoka SMEs. Hapo ndio ilinifurahisha kwamba tulichukua hiyo technology ambayo SMEs wametengeneza ya regenerative agriculture, tukaitest ili tuweze kutoa evidence kwamba hizi technology ambazo ni regenerative zinaweza pia zikatoka from being practices to technology, ziwe na standards na ziwe replicable, meaning huyo mtu anaweza fanyia biashara. Of course kuna maswali nimewauliza ambayo labda tutaongea baadaye kuhusu vile wanaweza kusustain hiyo biashara yao, kwa sababu NPK imesustain biashara yake kwa sababu kila mwaka hata mkulima wa 10 acres akitaka atapata tu. So hayo ndio mambo tumefanya, na kwa sasa labda nikomee hapo nikingoja maswali tukiendelea mbele. Ricky?
Awesome. Kofi. Thank you very much, Professor Rewe. So I think we've had, it's just a flavor for what were the interventions, what, relating to this outcome, but also across to the whole project. And I know there will be more as we go on with the rest of the day, but I just wanted to get some quick reactions before we break. that link to what we had previously from the national Csa M&E. And this is really about opportunities, so that even as we take a break, we are already thinking about how do we tap into the opportunities, how do the farmers look into some of these areas that the climate change unit at the Ministry of Agriculture is already spearheading. How do we partner? Even as Patrick has said, we are looking for a phase 2, you know, how do we continue and improve the collaboration? So there are a couple of points which I think it would be good to just hear in terms of highlights, and you can pick selectively. But from what Mr. Kibaya told us, we heard that there's a draft report that has done an analysis of approaches to address climate change impacts. So it would be good to hear, you know, Prof, you talked about it, but in terms of the approaches, the blending of the use of regenerative inputs and, conventional inputs, you may maybe just touch slightly on that, if you could. We also then heard about the M&E and reporting tools for CSA. So I think, Felix, this would come to you in the sense of how are we looking or reporting into what is happening nationally? Were we looking at the M&E framework as we were doing our work? And how is that as an opportunity, you know, so that we have clear reporting from the ground? As he said, we're preparing for COP29 in November. So how does REMS inform from what the project has been doing? And then perhaps Patrick, because you talked about the, you know, with the master trainers and the farmer field school trainers, and the same, I think some of them are also the RA champions. How do we contribute? I think there was one point here where Mr. Kibaya mentioned climate security curriculum, and he talked of fragile areas. And someone said water is the next, you know, if there was going to be another world war, now it is shifting, I don't know, it's now Ukraine, it's what, but there used to be a time we said water was going to be the trigger for the next major conflict globally. So how does the ministry make use of the resources, the capacities that are already here within us, to roll out some of these tools that they have developed? So perhaps, Prof, we'll start with you.
Okay.
Yes, thanks.
Yeah, that was a very excellent question, because we've been grappling with this replacement psychology, and people have been fighting. That's why you find that there's resistance in advancing agroecology and organic agriculture, even in the political space, because the lobbyists in the chemical fertilizer and so forth have been feeling shortchanged because of the narrative. And that's why the narrative has to change. There has to be a win-win situation, because what they're supplying is not wrong. They're supplying nutrients. The only problem is if you're supplying nutrients without life. So that's what has to be sunk into their skulls. That supplying nutrients is okay, but if you supply nutrients without life, one day, because of loss of life in the soil, those nutrients will have no value. So the concept of integration has come up. Even that was discussed when we were discussing REMS 2. Yeah, that if that sees the light of day, and I hope it will, God willing, that the concept of integration and seeing how integrated products can come out also in this RA space, as long as we evaluate them to remove anything that is acidifying the soils and things like that, that can be done. And with integration, you end up with the best of both worlds. You end up with the nutrients, and you end up with the life of the soil, which is the organic matter. The big elephant in the room when it comes to chemical fertilizers is organic matter. It doesn't have. And by the fact that they lack organic matter in itself, it's a time bomb, because it's reducing returns. You keep on using, but it's a reducing returns, because the media that you're using it on will not sustainably be able to survive. So bringing in the organic matter is a game changer. That's why I'm hoping that in the next approach, we will be looking at integrated RA products. And those ones will be unique because in a way they will be supplying the best of both worlds. So that is true. That is the approach we should be taking going forward.
Great, thanks, Prof. Felix.
Okay, so on the reporting, under REMS project, what we did was to cascade the M&E reporting tool training to the county MSPs. This training was done with all the 5 counties, and it involved the ministry staff up to the sub-county levels. So this training was done. Only that now the issue here is how much is the county departments utilizing the reporting from the grassroots, reaching them, and also how is at the national, how are they following up or coordinating this to get the reporting, because this such a training took place. So that is one thing we are looking at. And also when you look at the reporting, we are seeing from the national office where the climate change is, how do they harmonize or improve coordination between the department where the matters climate change is vested, which is in the environment, and where the activities are, which is in the Department of Agriculture with the farm. How is that information flowing across board and improving that coordination such that these things work in harmony, so that when we are talking about this event reporting, every stakeholder within that MSP from across board, those who are doing things in environment and all the other departments are able now to report through a single, let's say from a county from one source, and then you to avoid the duplication of reports.
Thanks.
All right. Just to seek clarification on the question, and this sounded to me like it's a question on how can we scale up the approaches that we've used in the project, and how can we institutionalize that so that it can be widely adopted beyond just the project. I think this is a big question, and as a project there are lessons that we learned in the first phase which have actually informed how we are thinking about the next phase. And we have moved away from now thinking about the different like outcome 1, outcome 2, or outcome 3, to now thinking about the system per se. And I will try to explain this slightly. So from the systems perspective, we are now looking at the set of actors, the set of relationships, the connectivity within these relationships, and how then we can be able to drive not only the different practices, but the patterns of applying, or the patterns that we have actually seen in terms of adoption. For instance, one of the patterns that we are seeing is the fact that adoption of regenerative agriculture is currently being driven by the fact that there is a reduction in the cost of production. That is a pattern that we are observing. But it is not in line with what we were thinking in terms of the attitudes and the norms and the ways of thinking, because the thinking around regenerative agriculture is actually on, is it improving the soil health? So there is still a mismatch between the key driver, which should be on the soil health, and the incentive, which is actually a perception from the farmer side. And so these are the elements that we are actually going to be shifting. And so the curriculum is likely to shift slightly so that it now encompasses the systems thinking, rather than just, hey, let's adopt 1, 2, 3 things. Let's adopt, for instance, the composting or the regenerative practices that we have learned, to now including or integrate the elements of productive use of renewable energy. So we are likely to see that kind of shift from solving specific problems to actually shifting the patterns in the coming days. And we must be already aware that we are working with the partners, or we actually nurture partnerships that can help us to shift the institutionalization of regenerative agricultural practices. And so this also presents an opportunity in the coming days where we are catalyzing collaborations or catalyzing actions from the collaborators in the sector rather than doing the work ourselves, just like we did in the first phase. So you will see a lot of support to the actors rather than us acting, but just supporting the actors to actually implement some of the practices. We are also likely to see a bit of scale up, really scaling deep, right? So what that means is the practices that we have actually learned in the process, the approaches that we used in the first phase, for instance, the farmer field school, we are then likely to go deeper from where we are. But we are retaining the systems that, and perhaps increasing the capacity to deliver more. The systems that we've used, for instance, the master trainers, for instance, the farmer field schools, facilitation, those are the systems that we are actually going to be working with. But it is important to mention that because of that systemic shift, then the curriculum is likely to incorporate elements of climate change and adaptation to become a bit more prominent and pronounced in terms of what are we likely to be doing in terms of adaptation and mitigation. And so it aligns with this. Just to paint a picture then on what we are looking towards in terms of the system transformation as a project and how the next phase is likely to look like. We are thinking of approaching the project from the 6 dimensions of what we have identified within SNV as the 6 dimensions of systems transformation. The first one is looking at the policies which brought us together here, and identifying the critical areas within the policy arena on what can we shift within the policy so that it can actually support not just agroecology but the system with which we operate in. And some of the systems that we identified actually align with the ministry's thinking around agroecological zones, right? So then we are not just looking at agroecology within the 3 areas that we worked with, but within the system as a whole. So that we are not just looking at horticulture, agroforestry, livestock, but what else within that system needs to shift so that there is greater adoption of these practices. The other one is on the practices themselves. What are the critical elements that happen on a daily basis, both from the farm level to the different actors that are working within the system. And so we're also trying to look at the barriers that perhaps impede action from the actors within a system. But after looking at that, we're also looking at within a system there are quite a number of actors, and how can we be able to shift or support the power dynamics within the system so that, you know, everyone is comfortable to act and support some of these practices. And we're also now looking at critically the relationships, which is actually in line with what I have seen here. I think Technical Working Group 4 and 5, I saw something related to collaboration and partnership. That is actually the thinking also from our end on, like I mentioned, catalyzing collaborations and partnerships for better and greater action within the system. But we're also looking at the resource flows. And it is also important that I think it was identified as one of the challenges here. That resource flow is actually impeding the action of the MSPs. But then in our next phase, we are thinking of how we can be able to mobilize resources to support from both the actors and from outside of the system, just so that we can be able to have a critical flow of resources and create what you are calling a movement of change. All right? But most importantly, and this has played out in the first phase, the shift in attitudes, the norms, and the ways of thinking. It is actually one of the sometimes forgotten components, but it plays a critical role in whatever we are doing here, even in terms of the cohesion at the MSP level. So we are moving then towards shifting the ways of thinking, and we have an elaborate framework of working towards that. And our role then would be to start with the partners that we have worked with, just so that we can have a common vision of where we want to be in the next 5 years or 10 years, and then working together towards that common vision. And as part of that, developing the tools or adopting the tools that we have worked with. For instance, the curriculum that we have mentioned. And the MSPs, how can we be able to strengthen the MSPs to better respond to the issues that are raised right from the farm up to the national level. So that is now the thinking on how we are likely to be institutionalizing the gains from the first phase, but also broadening its adoption in the next phase. Thank you.
Great. A hand for him. I think we just want to thank the three gentlemen for their inputs. They were just giving us a snapshot, and I know we'll be able to get...
Just a quick one, Ricky.
Yeah.
Patrick has said some very important things. One of the things that I'm hoping we can focus on is the farmer field school transition, because I have a feeling that they have understood the business of regenerative agriculture, and the SMEs have been working with them very closely. We were even thinking of upgrading them from just being a farmer field school, where people are learning, to now a farm business unit, so that they can be multipliers of the technology, they can be retailers, they can be also suppliers for the raw materials. Because right now, if you look at the SMEs, they are really struggling in terms of, because the question we ask them, and it remains the question, can they sustainably supply the product over the years? And the answer was raw materials. So that is something I just wanted to inject there.
Asante Prof. Hiyo ni kidogo ile nyuma ya tent, I think, but that's some of the discussions. Those are some of the discussions I'm sure we'll be having. So as we close the session, I think just to highlight, and very important, the aspect of the farmers, farmer champions, and what they have been doing, we will explore in depth. I think after the tea break, they will also be giving us their perspective. And there's a collaboration, you know, from the county directors who are present. We'll also be hearing from them, so that we have a holistic picture that gives us very clear indication what are the opportunities moving forward, because this is really about cascading what we have learned through this project and seeing how it can be replicated elsewhere, you know, and of course taken up at individual county level, and also informing how the national Csa M&E strategizes with its programs and the challenges and opportunities that were pointed out to us by Mr. Kibaya. So let's give them all a hand. We'll break for tea. So I know we want to do a photo shoot. I don't know if the media guys will direct us on how or where it is I've identified for that, but I think it would be good if we can do that very rapidly, so that when we break for tea, we can be back here. It's now 11. If we could be back here by 11:20. So I know that we'll have the discussion, as I said, after the tea break, but for now, Victor, can you please direct us to where we're having our photo shoot? We should just exit Tuende tuchukue hiyo picture. Our tea is served at the bottom of the stairs. So once we've taken the photo, we'll just come have a cup of tea and then we can be back here